Good evening. I am Peter Pingator. This is the scheduled meeting for the Community Preservation Committee for Wednesday, July 19th, 2023. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format. The public can participate by Zoom link, which is listed on the agenda, which has been posted with the clerk's office. The public can also participate by being here live at the PSAT building at 500 Dedham Avenue in Needham. The same rules apply with respect to members of the committee. I think tonight we have all but one of our members participating tonight here, and one is participating virtually through Zoom. So because of that, let me just begin by doing a roll call, and which also consists of our tech check. So when I repeat your name, just let me know if you're here and if you can hear me. Joe Barnes.
Here.
Laura Dorfman.
Here.
Reg Foster.
Present.
Dave Herrer.
Here.
Jean McKnight.
Here.
And Peter Pingator, Chair, present. Reg, you can hear us all?
I can hear you fine. Thank you.
Great. All right, and staff, why don't you just announce your names just to make sure that everyone virtually and presently can hear us.
Cecilia. Lauren.
Welcome, Lauren. We'll get to you in a minute, but welcome, Lauren Spinney.
Thank you.
As I said, it's in a hybrid format, and so all the materials that you should be posted unless otherwise noted. And the ground rules are the ones that we usually have in place. But I want to make sure the record is clear, so whoever speaks, please either state your name or allow me to state your name so that the record is clear. Okay, mute your phone if there's background noise, and in light of the fact that we're hybrid, we will continue with roll call votes. Let's turn to our meeting agenda, which was posted and you should have with you. And I want to exercise some discretion on the sequencing. We've had discussions at our prior meeting regarding the leadership of the committee. And what I'd like to do is move that discussion up to our next agenda item. Hopefully have a vote, a reorganization vote for the committee chair, vice chair, or co-chairs as it may be. And then from there, we'll have those succeeding officers take control of the meeting. Okay. So I think we had our discussion last week regarding the possibility of Dora and Joe serving as chair and co-chair or co-chairs, or chair and vice chair or co-chair. I am going to, in a minute, make a motion to not nominate them. But in connection with the discussion, then I guess we could start by saying, are there other individuals that are interested in being nominated? And we can have a discussion regarding that, and we can have our votes at that point. Any other discussions? Okay. I'm still going to I'll still make the motion. We'll nominate them, and then I'm going to again ask for any other further nominations. Okay, so I'll make a motion to nominate Joe Barnes and Laura Dorfman to serve as co-chairs for the Community Preservation Committee beginning this evening, and then to serve until the committee is reorganized in another similar fashion. Can I have a second that? Okay. Think we'll have a discussion, but I also, this is where I should have checked the rules on this, but I guess we could have other nominations too. Are there any other nominations? Okay, then let's have, yes, Reg.
Mr. Chair, so you had an action item last time to check on your status as a committee meeting member in terms of nominating and voting on things. And I'm wondering if you did that and are able to make a nomination at this point.
Okay, I did actually, that's not what I agreed to, but I did check with town council and Cecilia.
Yeah.
Are we comfortable with my role?
Yeah,
Otherwise, let
council-
somebody else make the nomination.
Council said that Peter can stay on until his replacement is appointed. And then he would have to leave, and we are in the process of trying to make that appointment as well as the other two vacant positions.
Okay, so are there any other further discussion? Okay. All right, shall we have a vote? Okay, let's do,
Was there was a second, yes.
there's a second, okay. All right, let's have our vote. Joe Barnes,
Yes.
Laura Dorf.
Yeah.
Reg Foster,
Yeah, aye.
Dave Harris,
Aye.
Gene McKnight,
I,
and the chair votes aye. Okay, so now with that, what I'd like to do is congratulate Joe and Laura. Thank you for agreeing to step up and step in. And so now that you are assuming that role, what I'd like to do is turn the balance of the meeting over to you. And we'll begin, I guess, with our next action item on the agenda, which is approval of the meeting minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is going to be a challenging role to fill after the leadership position you have taken over the last 3 years, 6 years, whatever it might be, but you've done one great job, and Laura and I will do our best to replicate the good work that you've done. And with good people on the committee, I'm sure that they'll support us as best they can. So thank you once again for your work.
Thank you.
Approving of the minutes. I suspect that everyone has had a chance to read them. Thank you, Lauren, for getting those out. And I would suggest that we approve the minutes as a whole. I did find some typographical errors, and as did you, I'm sure.
I
Jane?
did, and
Yes.
I didn't have an opportunity to read them all. But of those I did read, I did have some suggestions for changes, not of a substantive nature.
Right, I found no problem with the content. I found some typos, which I would suggest that we forward to either Cecilia or Lauren, is that right?
You'll probably be fine, forward to me, sure, and I'll give them a close review for that, with that
Okay.
in mind as well.
Do we feel comfortable doing that, voting as a whole?
You probably want to list, I would make a,
All right.
I'll make a motion. I could make a motion to approve the following minutes.
Okay.
And if we can list the minutes, if I could use you, that's it.
That's what I had.
Yeah, good. The minutes of the following meetings. January 11th, 2023. No, excuse me. January 12th, 2022. February 9th, 2022. And then January 11th, 2023, January 25th, 2023, February 8th, 2023, and 6/14,
June 14th.
June 14th, 2023. Yeah.
A second.
Okay.
Discussion?
Yes, I said there are no substantive changes, but I noticed immediately that there's something on the June 12th. January 12th, 2022, having to do with the application FY 2301 Needham Housing Authority Property Existing Conditions Reports Property Survey. And it says the request is for $8-5. Later in discussing the same project, it says, and not in the same minutes, but in a subsequent meeting, it said the request was $62,500. It's not possible to just correct that typo unless we know what the dollar figure should be there.
I suspected it was a zero that was.
Missing
someone had a
805.
dash rather than a zero.
So we changed the request amount. So the original request. I don't have that in front of me. All right, why don't we find out what that figure is, but I suspect it may have been.
I remember it went.
I don't know that we reduced the amount to 60,000 by that point. What is it?
It went to 1,386,000.
No, this is for the property survey, property survey. So let's just go, you know what, by January, that was still the original application, so we'll just rely on
I
what the
can do
application states.
A little bit of light digging and get that, if that's, I would say that's typographical.
Yeah,
We can,
okay.
we can, yeah, we can make that adjustment
Truly
easily.
is, But
Okay.
it's just not possible to know what the. right
Yeah, I'm
number is,
not
but-
sure what, I
Okay,
don't
so we
remember.
just
We can find
hand that, and if we need markups, just hand them to Lauren.
yeah. that works.
That would be great. I have here what the final approved amount was, but this sounds like it was an earlier iteration.
Yeah, it had changed.
Okay.
Out of curiosity, what was
Yeah,
fun?
I only,
Oh, the final was
I just went my initials on it.
property survey,
okay.
81,978.
But that's not what Jean is.
No, I know, she's just talking
Okay.
about the application now. Yeah,
Okay.
so it was larger.
These are the four that I looked at. I regret that I didn't get to the last 30, so relied on others for that.
Okay, I looked at I looked at carefully all the 2023 minutes, so hopefully they're in pretty good shape.
All right, having made these comments, I would suggest then that we approve the minutes aforementioned with the corrections that are mostly typographical. And we'll approve those in a batch. Do I have a second on that?
Yeah, well, actually, I made the motion already.
You did.
So, yeah.
We're
I
just
second
Seconded,
doing
so we'll
the
just,
stipend
we'll go with
right
our vote.
now.
Okay.
So let's go with our vote. Roll
Okay.
call vote.
Roll call vote. David,
Yes,
Jean,
Yes.
Laura, Peter,
Yes,
and the chair votes yes as well,
and we got Rich.
and Reg.
Yes.
All right. Next item on the agenda, the updates on the CPC administrative staff, financial consultant advisory group. I would ask Peter and Cecilia. And Lauren, if you have any input on that as well, to update us on that information.
So I guess Cecilia, you can start with admin, staff, and financial consultant.
Yeah, so update on admin staff, here she is. This is Lauren, she'll be helping out with all of the administrative stuff, so taking the minutes, sending out packets, agendas, communicating with everyone, so any email is either gonna come from me or Lauren in the future. So just keep an eye out for both of our email addresses. And then with the financial consultant, I am working on drafting up the contract, getting some information from the consultant. Right now, we had one response that looks very qualified. And so I'm working on that. The cost came in at, sorry, I want to make sure I switched it up the last time I said it out loud. Yeah, $20,000. Which is a little bit less than I was expecting, so that was a pleasant surprise. Yeah,
I just got a quick question.
Yeah.
Is that based on a scope of work or?
yeah, so we had provided them with a scope of work, to provide guidance on the housing authority financial requests that we anticipate coming for FY 25. So it's just based on this. She has experience in doing this type of work in other communities, such as Salem, Chelsea, Wellfleet, Cambridge, Andover, Somerville. So she's kind of been involved in a lot of the more high profile communities, working with affordable housing. This will be to do some data collection and analysis, prepare a draft report based on applications, provide us with guidance, do any sort of follow-up that we may need, and give a few presentations as well to us.
Cecilia, you have her name? Do you recall?
Emily Achenberg. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly.
For what it's worth, I was one of the individuals that interviewed her. So we got an interview on behalf of the CPC with Emily.
Cecilia, can I ask that she would be available to us throughout the year,
Yes,
but she has the expertise in the housing authority
yeah,
area as well, okay?
Okay, and on the advisory group, T-Chalk, I checked with our chair of the select board, who are ultimately going to be accepting the appointments to that committee. My appointment has been accepted by the select board, and what I learned was that they were still waiting for a couple of additional appointments. And so there is no organizational meeting scheduled yet.
But you've been appointed as a member, but.
I have been.
Yeah.
So I guess I didn't know that it must be a two-step process where you appoint me and then the select board accepts my appointment. So
I guess we nominate you or something.
but I didn't realize that, but that's how it went. I've been accepted.
Like trying to get out of the mob, Peter, huh? You just can't happen. Get dragged in.
That's okay.
Yeah,
That's fine.
good. I'm
That's
happy to have
fine.
you.
Get them to change the name.
T-Chalk, you don't like that name?
Every time I hear that name.
No, it's not good.
What did the acronym stand for?
Town Community Housing Oversight Committee.
Oversight.
No. Okay.
Any other comments? All right, moving on. FY 2024-04 CPC application, the Claxton Field renovation. We had determined last year that this application of this renovation was eligible. Given this being a new fiscal year, and I'll get some guidance from you, Mr. Former Chair. Should we take a vote on this again to determine it's still
Oh,
eligible?
Yeah, I think it is a new application. So is there a new date on it? Is it a new application?
So
It does,
I guess it's up for discussion. It's a new application form. It's the same project.
right, same project.
So I guess if we can look at it as one of two ways, it'll still technically be funded under FY 24. So we can keep the same original application number, or we could change it, but I wouldn't see.
Okay, so is it
That's
actually,
all internal.
is it all the same? Is it the same application? They change it?
They resubmitted it, so some of the language might be slightly different. I actually didn't compare.
Okay,
I did add a section that just says, you know, what if any changes from the last submission are there? But the funding request is the same, the intent is the same, they're just probably a little further along in the design,
right.
but that's.
So I don't think there's any harm in having a motion that regarding eligibility.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Sure, I mean, that's
fine, sure.
Talk to the chair. Okay.
The changes from the prior application where it references soil testing and determinations of safety. Where does that stand, Cecilia, do you know?
We got testing results back. Oh, God, I'm trying to remember. I know it's been analyzed, yeah, and it wasn't the really bad option. They're able to move forward with it. It wasn't the, everything's fine option. But they're doing more long-term kind of analysis at this point, just maintaining it. And we're in the process of getting rid of it. But I can get a better update for everyone that uses more of like from somebody who's day-to-day involved in it, instead of me remembering off the top of my head.
From what you gather, Cecilia, though, we would be safe in moving forward by,
Yes.
okay, the soil testing, the contamination is not going to stand in the way of this
No.
moving forward.
No,
I've read the report, and I'm also an environmental engineer. And, it's just, a non-disturbed issue. They don't want to dig it up. So they're gonna pretty much go with, the way that they originally planned.
Okay.
But what did they find?
Oh, they found some trace amounts of residuals from burning, which was expected because it was an old burn dump, but they're way below the surface. There's maybe a foot of good soil on top of it, and then the grass. And they were originally going to scrape off the soil put down a membrane, what they call a demarcation membrane, which is sort of like a partial cap, and then put more soil back on. What I'd be interested in seeing in their design is whether they're gonna scrape off this foot or six inches to a foot of soil, as opposed to just putting more material on top of it. That's what I would recommend. That's up to their engineer. Let's see what they're gonna do. But, yeah, the determination is there was no present harm. They do have to do a risk analysis, which is something the state mandates. So that's
Yeah,
probably. what
that's,
they-
I think that's what we're working on.
That's what they're doing now, I guess. Okay, so,
Yeah, the intent was if the findings had come back in a way that would delay or cause problems, they would not have submitted this request. That was the plan.
What if we label, may I make a suggestion? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead,
Mr. Chairman.
I'm
What
just,
if
I'm gonna go to Peter, I said,
Yeah,
you're gonna recognize people now, so. Sure, it just in having read the minutes, so just, this afternoon. I saw that there were questions raised that town council was going to advise on the eligibility of pathways. I have the feeling that we discussed that after those meetings and felt that pathway improvements were something that was eligible. And I note that on the second page of the application, there's an emphasis on the parkway, a new statewide, site-wide pathway system will improve ADA access throughout, and a new perimeter path will enhance multi-generational use. And the same thing is pretty much repeated under the paragraph community need. So if we're going to be voting on eligibility, I feel satisfied that pathways like this are eligible, but I know it was raised as an issue before, so.
So it reminded me though, may I speak, Mr. Chair?
Peter.
So it reminded me that we did have an opinion of council and we did express some concern about expenditures on pathways and whether they're permeable or not. And so
well, it was more like that and artificial turf.
So do we, I just don't want to be, should we be sending this off to Chris and, our town council on the question of eligibility, or are you saying, no, we're fine with that?
I'm just trying to tap my memory on whether later we determined that I remember we had the meeting with a person from the Mass,
Right.
statewide advisory group, and after talking with that person about the issues like this, and the same thing was in the minutes about the poured in place materials for the tot lot. The minutes say they would not be eligible, that would not be an eligible use of the funds. But we later discussed that it would be an eligible use of the funds. So I just want to.
Yeah, so,
I suggest that we wait and see the details of what they're proposing, but on the surface of it, no pun intended. It seems acceptable. I have another another question. But let's,
I was gonna say, I don't think it hurts to get his opinion if that is part of the funding, but they're only asking for $1 million out of the 1.7 million project. So if it's not eligible under CPC, it may just be part of the money that's coming from the town and not CPC. So just to have that clarity so that they know what part of the project can come from this funding versus the rest of the funding, I don't think would hurt.
Well, maybe it's just, maybe it's just a matter of reviewing the letter that came in before. Because if we're asking the same question.
Yeah, and I can do some digging in
it might
the
just
old
be a
notes.
waste of his time.
I would just point out, it's a new project. That they have, they're gonna come up with a different design, number one. And number two, they have to deal with their conservation commission. Because before they said they weren't, subject to the conservation commission, but that was not correct. And they gotta deal with the conservation commission. And which means that, we're probably not gonna allow impervious walkways to be something like what's around the reservoir. But can I ask? another
Go ahead.
question?
Go ahead.
Oh, and it's something I had a question, way back. They listen, this is open space and recreation. Can it be both, or is it,
I think, well,
you know, I was looking at the definition of open space. And it talks about, you know, really nice open space stuff, and then at the end it says, and recreation, so.
I
it's
know,
all-
isn't it confusing?
Yeah, so, I mean,
Peter, what's your opinion on that?
I think that that's kind of an old habit, but right, I think that my motion would have been that it's open, that it's clearly a recreation. I don't know that it's eligible for funding under open space. We could look into that, but it seems to me that it's
Yeah.
certainly eligible under recreation. Go through that.
and then I went back and I looked at the list that's on the website of all the projects. And, you know, there's like a mixture of where these things are, and I don't think it gives a good picture of what's been spent on recreation and what's been spent on open space. So I would suggest that we revise that table and, you know,
But I think going forward, as you said, that, this should be characterized as recreation. And
okay, it's
I
just.
realize that we have the 10% requirement to spend on open space. And if it doesn't count, then.
Yeah, no, I
For the
agree.
10%, but I think we should respect that.
Do these comments warrant us holding off on moving this
No,
project
I
forward?
wouldn't, no,
Okay.
not in my opinion.
Yeah. And I
I
think,
don't know if, excuse me, may I chime in?
Lauren?
I don't know if this allowable spending chart from the DOR might provide a little clarity on the question, because it does give definitions, and I think based on what I'm reading, and perhaps you might want to look at it, open space is defined as land to protect existing and future well fields, aquifers, recharge areas, watershed land, agricultural land, grasslands, fields, forest land, fresh and salt water, marshes and other wetlands, ocean, river, stream, lake and pond frontage, beaches, dunes and other coastal lands, lands to protect scenic vistas, lands for wildlife or nature preserve, and land for recreational
Yeah, I
use.
mean, that's-
Yeah,
So,
oh, so that's what you were referring to,
Yeah,
Blake, right?
the last,
As opposed to active or passive
same
recreational
thing.
use.
I think what's meant by recreation in that context is trails, so that the public can enjoy the open
yeah,
space.
passive. right.
Yeah, passive, right, the word isn't there, but I think that's what's meant.
All right,
because
Peter.
recreation is, for this, actually, I think this is rehabilitation of recreation space because it is actually a capital improvement. That's what it is. So, but I don't see, if you want, I don't see, I think that the projects can go forward. I think it would be helpful if we go back to our town councils. I think the confusion is this. Town council gave an opinion, pretty narrowly drawn. Relying, I think, we're a lot on those DOR regulations that were issued in 2019. Stuart Saginaw, who's the executive director for Community Preservation Alliance, had maybe perhaps a little more liberal view, and maybe a more enlightened perspective. And so I think that there may be some tension between and some need to clarify between our town council and perhaps we probably just want to bring it back to our town council, just or at least let's start by looking at the letter. I know that he relied very heavily on those DOR opinion regulations from 2019 in his opinions about eligibility. So let's get the letter out and see. And
Can we take a vote, and that it, we find it eligible, except for a concern about whether the paths are eligible and,
I just have a question before we do that.
Lauren?
That's okay. Should we get the breakdown from Park and Rec on what is to be used for what, so that we can determine for sure that the pathway stuff is separate? I don't know.
I think historically, I'm thinking of the Emery Grover project. We definitely asked for a budget after we voted on eligibility. I think that's fine.
Because we're only asking for 1 million out of the 1.8, so.
But we're making the assumption that the rest, that anything over 1 million is not eligible, but we don't really know for sure. I don't know, maybe it's under yet.
Oh, sorry.
I propose we vote on it because we'll get more details about exactly what they're gonna be proposing. Then we could decide on whether it's eligible or not. We could get the council's opinion, but right now it's just one couple, vague pieces of,
But we're voting
Paragraphs.
on eligibility, right?
Correct.
yeah. And we proved it before.
So we're gonna take this as a new project, 2000, correct?
Yeah, the application.
The application is a new application.
Yeah.
I wonder if we should label it as 20, oh, can I speak?
Go ahead.
I think, what if we label it as 2024 and, what was our original number on it? I can't
It's
remember.
4, I think.
04, paren A, close paren. Okay, so amended or
Yeah,
different, okay.
we should distinguish it.
Okay, so, but everybody knows, oh, okay, it's, if you're looking at what does the record look like? Well, it looks like, oh, I see, this came in after this, they labeled it as A, 1A instead of 4.
2024 04A.
No, 2024, is that it? 04?
Yeah.
Correct.
That is what you said.
And so then, I'll make this motion, can I make a motion? Mr. Chair?
Could you please make a motion,
All right,
Peter?
move that Claxon Field Project 2024 04A is eligible for CPC funding as rehabilitation to land for recreational use.
And second,
Discussion?
Are we going to town council for this or no?
I think
You're gonna
Cecilia,
ask that the question first.
Cecilia, you're gonna take this back to town council for
Yeah.
his opinion?
Yeah.
Primarily on the pathways, correct?
I think that's the only issue.
Yeah, that's the only thing we have a question about.
Yeah, I can do that.
All right. So we'll vote moving forward with getting an explanation from town council. Any other discussion? Reg, you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
I can just see the screen better when,
okay.
go off. I can look at the, what's being projected.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion made by Peter? Yeah, will signify by acknowledging. Reg,
Yes,
David,
yes,
Jean,
Yes,
Laura,
Yeah.
Peter,
Yes,
and the chair votes yes as well. While we're moving this forward, we probably would be wise to assign liaisons for this project as it moves forward, huh? David, I think you and I had this last year, the original one.
right.
You feel comfortable doing it again?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay. I'll stay on with you as well then. Any objection? Anyone else would rather jump in? Okay,
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Reg,
Yeah, so do we want to see if we can set a date to invite the proponent to come in for a presentation?
I think we have that as part of the schedule.
it's on the calendar.
Yeah, it's on the calendar,
August
just-
23rd.
August
I'm just-
23rd.
I'm just thinking of a quorum and our sort of fluid membership here, make sure that everybody's going to be there.
Well, hopefully we'll have new additions to the committee, correct, by then?
Can anyone want to hold?
Yeah. Anyone know their schedule this summer, whether they can or cannot make 23rd?
let me just, one, two,
I can be there, Joe.
Okay,
that is very iffy for me. I have it on my calendar. I'm hosting children, grandchildren at the cottage. Will I be able to have a quiet moment to zoom in? I don't know. I'll try. That's all I can say.
Reg, you'll be here. David,
Yes.
Yeah,
Laura, can you make it?
Only by Zoom.
Okay, I will be here.
it'll be recorded anyway.
Mhm.
Right, I can be here, and it is recorded, that's right, it's not a critical, there's not a vote.
Right.
And not to jump ahead a little bit, but we should have at minimum one more member by
Correct.
then.
So,
What do we need for form?
5.
So we're.
So Peter, you'll still be on this committee at that point.
yes, and so we should, okay, I'll jump, if you want to jump back to new member update, I'll go in later.
All right, any other comments on that? We know what we're doing, okay. We'll jump over the 5-year financial plan to new member update, and then we'll go back to the financial plan. Peter, you have any information?
All right, so new member, my understanding is that Park and Rec is meeting on Monday,
Yes,
and they are going to appoint a new member to participate actively on the CPC. So we should have a new representative from Park and Rec on this committee by our next, by our next meeting.
Okay.
Then I reached out, we still don't have meetings scheduled for interviews. And it's mostly has to do with personal situation with Mike Fee, who is our moderator. And so we had a death in the family, it was his father, and so we're trying to get that back on schedule. I had received as chair the applications for the committee members, and I have forwarded those applications that came in through the select board portal, both for moderator appointments and select board appointments, to Joe Barnes and to Laura Dorfman in anticipation of them assuming the leadership role of the committee. I think I've mentioned this before, but I think was it 6 or 7 people? Was it 6 applications for 3 positions? And they were all, they're good, very good candidates, very,
6 candidates for 3 spots.
good candidates for 3 slots. And so they're good candidates all. Okay. So hopefully that will happen soon enough. Okay. So that's, I guess we could, if we wanted to, well, no, let's just go back. And that's my update for that.
Okay, all right. So we'll look forward to at least one new member for the next meeting, hopefully more. Anything else? Any other questions, comments? All right, jumping back. Cecilia, could you walk us through the financial plan?
yeah.
I think you provided 2 options, right?
Yeah.
2 looks.
Let me pull those both up. Bear with me, they're quite small. Okay, so option 1, and I will make this. All right, option 1 involves fully funding the proposed Needham Housing Authority request of a little over 5 million that we expect before us this year. And it does involve using all of the Community Housing Reserve Fund in order to go towards that funding before dipping into any of the other free cash or general reserve. So with that, we are able to fully fund the housing authority and the other requests that we anticipate coming in front of us. But it does put us unable to fund much else in the future years,
Much else of what?
any request. That's not, so if we were to get something in open space, or historic preservation, we would be able to fund that because we have money in those buckets. But the public playgrounds and the basketball courts, and 2 of the fields at the elementary school are what we anticipate coming before us in 26 and 27. And because we would have to rely on free cash or the general fund, down here, we're pretty much. Let me see. 35 and 50. So we're able to fund the design of it in 26, but we're not able to fund anything in 27. We have like 400,000, so we can fund half of one of the projects, that either half of the public playgrounds or half of the basketball courts. And then we don't really have much money put aside for the housing authority for their upcoming $6 million request.
So but I have a question
Yeah.
about the assumption. My understanding was that the housing authority's request was going to be originally was going to be a total of 5 million. If I've got that right, and there's already been roughly, well, 1.4. That's been of that 5 million, so that's roughly 3.6.
My understanding the last time we met, and Reg, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was that the Linden Chambers that we were supposed to see in front of us in the fall, that's now getting pushed to the spring, that was in addition to the 2 or 3 million that we had in the out years, and so we were to combine those, and they would be looking for up to 5 million in 25.
All right, Reg, do you know what, at least what was it that you had represented, if you did, about what the ask was going to be for
Go ahead, please.
2025, for FY 2025?
So, based on, the update we placed, we gave, and I think it was in the mid-winter area that you're talking about, there, Cecilia. I think she summarized it completely, but when we go into November, December this year, we'll have a completely different new update. We've had the conceptual design completed as of June 30th, and we'll have the schematic design completed as of the September time period. And so all the cost estimates will be updated at that time. So, what Cecilia has summarized is accurate with respect to the view of the project in the midwinter period 2023.
So what I did, knowing that if we
I guess I should just want to add that obviously construction costs have been going up, and we're in the middle of a big value engineering exercise. So, things are changing.
So what I did, because I saw that and was like, ooh, that wipes us out, was the option 2, and obviously there's more options than just these 2, but instead of going down a rabbit hole, making up a bunch of stuff without talking to you guys, I wanted to bring this one up, is to fund their $5 million request in FY 25 at 50%. Which would allow us to then also fund everything that is projected in FY 26 and 27 and 28, as well as funding their FY 27. Yes, FY 27 requests at 50%. So basically taking 50% of both of their large requests and being able to fund that, and that we have the money to do. And then I figure there may be, as Reg gets more accurate numbers, more up-to-date numbers in the fall, we look at finessing those numbers a little bit more.
So we could,
Go ahead. Yeah.
so that is that we can fund things other than just the housing authority proposal. If we fund housing at 50% for both the FY 2025 ask and the FY 2027 ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's mostly because the requests that are on the horizon are the housing authority, and then things that would come out of free cash and general reserve, because they're recreation and not one of the specific budget buckets.
Right.
Okay.
So what is it that what projects are we going to fund if we can, the projects that would go back on the board and be funded?
Yes, you have.
Funded if we do fund the housing authority at 50%.
So we have the construction costs for DeFazio Playground and the high school tennis courts that are projected to come in front of us this year, in addition to the 5 million housing authority request. And then in 26, we have design for public playground renovations and basketball courts. And then a design for the Broadmeadow and Elliott Field renovation. And then in 27, it's the construction for those projects. And in 28, it's a design for another public playground. And as we get closer to those we'll have the specific playground identified. But-
And just an additional comment. If I'm understanding you correctly, Cecilia, if you look at 2027, there's another $6 million there. I think that's a placeholder that was put in there for the High Rock Homes redevelopment. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and so, we've taken a 1-year delay on the Linden Chambers, and so that's another thing we'll be adjusting and updating when we get into the, Christmas, winter period, when we're considering all this, because that will move forward in time or out in time to beyond 2027.
And just for everyone's context, I had talked to Dave and he had told me it was fine to increase the projected state aid match to 20%. He said after looking at the past couple of years, he's comfortable that we'll be receiving a 20% state aid match as opposed to 10%. But again, as we all know, that next year we may not. We may feel differently.
I just had a question.
Laura?
Celia, maybe I'm missing something and I apologize. I'm looking at version 1 and version 2, and I still see the same amount in 2025 on each one. Where am I?
Oh, so the amount that's next to. Here, I can pull this up. So this amount is their request.
Right,
If you scroll down. Here. These are the amounts that we're funding. So that is half of the 5 million request, and that is just coming from the community housing.
okay, I'm sorry. a minute. I'm on version 2,
Yeah,
in the proposed projects,
yeah.
where I see the 5 million.
And if you scroll down to that's what we're actually able to fund. So the requests are up top and then
Got
the
it,
funded
sorry.
land.
My bad, thank you.
Any other comments? Reg, how did either one of these scenarios impact your planning for the project going forward? How would the 50% impact your plan for the project?
That would be, create larger challenges for us to find funding elsewhere. The CPA funds are sort of the fill in the gap funding. And so we have pressure from, just the, kind of significant increases in construction costs that are taking place year over year. So we took about use your own number, 5 to 10% increase in overall project cost just by having to slide the project a year. We reported on that earlier, a couple of meetings ago here. And it is likely that we're going to need more money than we advertised in the middle of the winter 2023 to kind of make the overall numbers work. But right now we're heads down just trying to design the project and trying to make sure that we wring out any additional unnecessary costs. And we basically build and design to a particular achievable budget that is not only what Needham can provide, generously through the CPA, but also, other sources of funding, because the CPA funds, when you come down to it, is only about 10 or 20% of the overall funding that's needed to do the construction.
Okay,
But I think that, can I?
Yeah.
I think that in light of this, it seems to me that on our side of the table, CPC, not the Housing Authority side of the table, that I think it's really important for us to get our consultant in place now, because just as a layperson looking at it, the numbers that I've seen in terms of CPC contributions on projects like this are not the per unit contribution that is, I'm seeing in the layer cake from the housing authority, and maybe, maybe particular reasons for that. I don't want to put Reg on the spot about that. He's not the expert. Margaret is. But I would like our expert to provide us with an explanation for that. And also, I just note too, that all along that housing authority said that they're, you know, they understand that we may not be able to fund it at that full percentage. And so question that I have for their consultant is, okay, well, what's your plan B then? Because you had that asterisk for the last few years. So now we've arrived at that spot. So what is it? What is the answer? And I'd like to hear that from our expert. Too. So I think the sooner that we get Emily involved on that, the better.
And I suspect not only will Emily be a consultant, but she may provide in her best knowledge, a recommendation as to what direction we may go. I would hate to fund the housing authority request completely at the expense of other projects that lay before us. I think we try to balance a little bit of the needs of the town and try to be as generous as we can, but keeping everyone in mind. David?
Just my opinion that, you know, the town should be able to fund recreation upgrades on its own. You know, why does the town need to go to the CPC for recreation upgrades when you look at the housing authority and they have limited amount of limited areas that provide funds. And if you look at the amount of money that the CPC has put into housing over its life, which I guess goes back to what, 2006 or something like, it's less than 10%. It's less than, you know, what the statutory requirement was. So,
Can I address that, by the way, because there's, can I speak to that?
Peter?
well, I'm just giving.
No, I
my
just want to know,
opinion.
everything up until that last statement is A-okay. You know, I have no response. That's fine. I have no dispute with that. But one thing that I wanted to clarify was that we put together our spreadsheet and I have those footnotes in the spreadsheet, which address two things. One is that that is a spreadsheet on what we spent in particular categories. And it's a pretty rudimentary spreadsheet that this committee basically put together. But it includes, the reason why it's weighted heavily towards recreation and historic is because it includes the full amount of the appropriation for the debt. But service payments on the debt go out 30 years. So we're mixing apples and oranges. We mixed in an appropriation with spending, and the spending is actually the thing that happens every year. So, because that's kind of critical. The other critical fact is that chart doesn't include the amount that we've been salting away for the housing authority. It doesn't factor in the $3.5 million that's sitting in a savings account. So I want the people listening to this, I want everyone to understand that. And in fact, and I say that in part because there was a think tank report which that went out and I know it went out and flat out distorted and made allegations about towns, including ours, failing to fulfill our requirement regarding 10%. It's not true. I was an author of a letter to the editor, laying out very carefully the critique, and as a result of that, our finance department put together a spreadsheet, which I really do want to include as an attachment, which shows that the amount that has been appropriated for community housing is over 12%. Okay, it's closer to 13%. So, and I think I want to be, why does that matter to me? Because I sat on this committee for 6 years, was part of a group of people that made decisions about doubling our expenditures, our appropriation to community housing in order to ensure that we could actually fund a project like the housing authority, or at least make great strides to do that. But, and I think it's just, I don't want to be I don't want people to have the impression that we've severely underfunded it, because there's no dispute. We know that we made priorities regarding historic preservation and recreation. We obviously have no dispute about that. And it was weighted in that area. And there's no dispute that we've now set our sights on trying to do something for community housing. But I just want what I want are accurate facts. That's all I want. I want accurate facts. And so related to that, I'm a little off script here, but I'd like, at least in our next agenda item, to have that spreadsheet put in front of this committee so that it can be attached as part of the CPA plan. But I'm, other than that, that's my only comment.
No, I appreciate
Yeah.
clarification.
I have a question.
Laura?
I don't know if it's to the consultant, but I'd like to get an update on the other sources of funds. And where that stands. And for example, the ARPA funds was one source that had to be applied for by a certain date. And then there were funds coming from repositioning. There was all these sources of funds from potentially HUD, and so I've lost kind of track of that. I don't know where you say, Reg, the construction costs and stuff have changed. Has anything changed with your other sources of funds? I think we would need to get an update on those at some point, whether it's from you or from the consultant.
Sure. Anytime.
I'm sorry. Can you give us an update on where you stand with some of the application for funding?
Craig said sure, we can give you an update anytime you want.
So you don't have one now, but maybe
Oh,
next
you're
time?
asking for it now. Okay.
I
That's
don't think that's in the
That's-
agenda.
not
No.
fair.
Yeah.
We can't do that.
No.
But
You
if you
can
want to
give us
put it on the
Yeah,
agenda
so-
for next month.
Yeah, I wasn't the one who said now. I was asking at some
Yeah.
point, we would like to get that either through you or our consultant. That's part of the piece of the puzzle.
May I suggest, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Reg?
that it makes sense to bring Emily, however you pronounce her last name or spell it, on board first, and then have us give an update, but perhaps have a discussion with her before we do that.
That's fine. That makes sense. Okay,
What is the timing of bringing, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name earlier here.
Is it
Miss Emily on board here.
Achtenberg?
Ochtenberg?
Achtenberg?
I can.
Yeah, I will give you guys at the next meeting a full update on once the contract's executed and all of that.
Okay,
So perhaps we're targeting, just for planning purposes, maybe we're targeting our September meeting for this update, maybe? Or what do you think?
well, we had the proponent presentation on the 23rd of August. So it may well be the, September 5th.
So
No,
September-
I'm sorry, that's a consultation with the select board.
looking at this, unless you guys want to mix fiscal years. The September meetings are September 13th is the public hearing, which we shouldn't have Reg give an update at that. And then September 20th is the vote on the article for Claxton.
So where would we fit in the consultant ahead of that? Is that a possibility?
I guess my question is, do we want to do it ahead of it, or do we want to get Claxton off the table and then?
That's a good point. Good
discuss
point,
it?
Celia.
As a point of information, there has been a request that we submit our proposal by November 1st, our preliminary application for Linden Chambers by November 1st. Town meeting is October 30th, if I believe, or somewhere at the end of October. I mean, would it make maybe more sense to respond to Laura's request in the context of the preliminary application coming in November and getting, the consultant is up to speed, we've just, gotten through town meeting and everything there, et cetera. I'm just trying to get a sense of, Mr. Chair, what you think we should be doing there.
I think it makes sense to get Claxton off the table so we can put our complete focus on the housing authority request. So yes, we're saying first meeting in November. That too long, too late?
I think it's very timely from my point of view, because we'll be starting the new cycle, basically, number one. And if I may give a brief additional update, we'll again have the schematic design done, which is a huge increment in additional design. It'll be done in the September timeframe. And then there's an agreement with the planning board to be holding public meetings around the zoning articles. They would like to hold public meetings around the zoning articles that they want to put forward at spring 2024 town meeting sometime in the late September and October timeframe. So all of that context and input will be sort of teed up by the time we submit a new preliminary application in early November. And maybe we can interpret Laura's very good suggestion as one where one that takes place in that sort of November, December timeframe. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure, is this part of the agenda, this type of discussion? Are we going too far here?
We've got.
No, it,
I mean,
it's loosely tied into the fall application process, so we can figure out our schedule for the fall application process.
So that's a different agenda item.
It is a different agenda item though, yeah.
Because when we're talking about sources and needs, I feel like my question was relevant, but that's okay.
Well, we can give a presentation at next month's meeting if that is what the committee wishes.
I think we're better off waiting. I don't know what the committee feels, but.
I agree.
I agree.
Let's wait.
I agree. Let's, my only request is that we get our consultant on board.
Yes,
And then our consultant can be a little bit of a guide on this.
Yeah.
Because even in terms of the ask from the housing authority, so I don't want them to waste their time. So I think that the consultant and keeping Laura's request in mind, keeping Reg's schedule and, the schedule of the housing authority in mind, I think that let's let the consultant weigh in on this.
Okay,
Is that okay?
makes sense.
Does that make sense to you,
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments, Jean?
Yes, I wanted to follow up on what was just said about the spending pattern over the years, because I agree with Peter. I had the same reaction to the report in the Globe of that report on spending of the towns in general. I said, wait a minute, towns are required to put at least 10%, and we've been very careful about that. And it seemed as though the report didn't even recognize that was the way things work. So, but at the same time, I want to say that I do agree with Dave that there has been a considerable amount of spending on historic preservation and on recreation. And it is time to shift to concentration on community housing. And I think in this time, there is generally a lot of support for renovating the Needham Housing Authority. So that's the direction we're going on now. However, I want to admit something. I couldn't follow the presentation based on these scenarios. I just really didn't understand it at all.
So
And there's letters here, C, C, F, G, that aren't explained. I just can't follow it.
So can I speak on that?
Yes, Peter.
So I think this is a difficult chart to understand on the first couple of passes through it. And kind of one-on-one offline really does help. I think my opinion is that we've served our purposes for tonight, which is, okay, we're gonna have some choices to make, right? We have some choices to make. But I can sit down with you, Cecilia, I would not hesitate that Cecilia could sit down with you. I could sit down with you too, but it took me,
No, I might
it
turn
takes,
to Cecilia, because she had this, right?
Yeah,
and it's a form that Dave has
would
been
like very
using.
much to understand it, and
yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
yeah, I would sit down with her and, so,
We'll
That's
work
what
it
I-
out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's some, as we get closer and as we have more up-to-date numbers and stuff, like I said, these aren't the only two options. So if you guys have any options you want me to look at, I have a couple other ones in mind that I can put together and see, because I think even if we were to not fund anything but housing, I don't think we would have the money, or it'd be very difficult to fully fund both of their requests, if those were the only projects we were funding, just because the money's not there.
Okay.
So there are some other options that we can look at as time goes on as well.
Another initial project for the consultant, I think. We need another set of financial eyes to take a look at this and maybe make some recommendations or explain it to us. It is difficult, you're right.
I think, but I think that Cecilia's kind of suggesting us, you can we can look at these projects.
Yeah.
Think it through on your, I'm sorry.
Mhm, mhm, no, go ahead.
Think it through on your own. Dave offered a pretty distinct, kind of position. Don't-
Can I amend my position?
Oh.
No, I stand corrected on the amount that, less than 10%, but 12%. That's pretty low in my opinion. And again, I don't see any reason why this town couldn't spend more on, of the tax money on recreation. And not be going to the CPC every time they want to renovate a playground. I don't see that, but
No,
again,
so what you're saying is, in terms of capital projects for recreation. Perhaps the town should be carrying a bigger load. One thing I don't know.
Well, it's like we say to like the housing authority, hey, well, what are your other sources of funding, But we never say that to the town. I mean, what is the town, they have.
Well,
pretty-
we say it to Park and Rec all the time.
Yeah, but
We never-
again, I just think that they have a good thing going and,
So noted.
yeah. That's
Okay. All right, so thank you, Cecilia. A lot of work goes into this and we will better understand it as the months go ahead.
And as we get closer, I can follow Dave's method and also do a memo with it that outlines exactly what I'm doing, because numbers without explanation usually don't get people very far. I just wanted, this was just like a very preliminary, because we don't have anything firm.
That'd be helpful.
Can I make it, if
Peter?
can I speak just,
You may.
this is kind of to Dave's point. So, is there a way, say the perception is that all Park and Rec capital projects are being funded by CPC. Is there a way to test that premise? Okay,
I can go back through my last 5 years even and look at the capital budget, what's been funded through CPC and what's been funded through the town.
and so we can do that for Park and Rec.
Yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
that
Yeah,
would be a good data point.
That's one of the
Right.
reasons we put that question on the new application, like sort of up near the front. On all the applications.
Okay,
Any other discussion? All right, moving on to the agenda, discussion regarding new member onboard training. Laurie, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, so, thank you. So, Lauren has already hit the ground running and produced this wonderful draft of the Remember handbook. It's great for new members, but also I think great for existing members. It has lots of great topics in it, including the schedule, members and contacts, grant appropriations versus current spending, reports to town meeting minutes, has a whole lot of information in it. So I thought I would just let her sort of describe where she's at with it. I think she wants us to take a look at it and give some feedback to her. So Lauren, if you could,
Thank you, Laura.
thank you.
This is really kind of a first pass based on my conversations with Cecilia and kind of the type of information that she thought would be useful for me getting up to speed in this role and kind of familiarizing myself with the committee and what it's been doing and how it functions. So what this is a packet, basically, that includes items like, oh, here's the index up, Cecilia's sharing it for us. So there's the schedule, there's the members and contact information, and then the first part to me is a little bit about what's happening currently, a snapshot of what's going on with the committee. The grant appropriations that have been done versus the spending on each one, so you can see which grants have been completed, which grants are still in progress, where that stands. And then the fiscal year 2024 funding outlook that came from the finance department, as well as Cecilia's spreadsheet, the funding outlook for the 5-year plan, the report to town meeting for 2023. And then I also included, as you see, the minutes basically for the last 6 months, which encompasses pretty much all of 2023. And then the forms. So there's the application process document that explains to applicants how the grant process works, as well as a form, basically a sample of what the application looks like, and a sample of follow-up questions. And then kind of goes into the resource documents, which would be the CPC plan document, the Needham bylaw, which established the CPC, the allowable usage chart, and the legislation. And then the bottom is just links to websites and resources that are active within that index there. And, our website where the meeting recordings are housed, and then information on the Community Preservation Coalition and the webinar that the Community Preservation Coalition put out, which is kind of a boot camp and gets an initial new member kind of way to understand how the CPA works. So all in all, this packet is this size. It's about 120 pages all in. The bulk of that really is the minutes. This is, as it stands now, a PDF. It's bookmarked so that you can navigate through it pretty easily. And then also the index has links, so you can, click on the index and it will bring you right to that section of the packet, so that you can kind of get to where you want to go relatively quickly. So I would just appreciate some input on, its contents. If you think that there's information here that's unnecessary, or information that you feel is missing and might be useful. Also, kind of how it's set up as this kind of online PDF with some navigation features, or if you prefer to kind of just have an online folder that has all of these documents stored in it individually. I just kind of took a first pass at the way I think it might be useful and work well for people.
I think it's amazing. One thought I had to make it less lengthy, and I don't know if people agree, and obviously we're not gonna solve this all tonight, but is if you had a link to where the minutes were,
Rather than
Right.
including them.
that might make the plan the document a little more succinct.
Sure.
But
Looks great.
I think it's wonderful.
Where is the document located now for review? Or is it on the website or where?
No, it's just in a draft form, so it hasn't been pushed out to anybody yet, other than, I just thought we'd get some input and finalize it, and then if you'd like to see it as a draft, I could certainly send it to you. It's something that's easy, it
No,
fits.
I
as an
just was
email.
worried that I had missed something, that it's out there and I was supposed to look at it and I didn't. No, okay.
I think people have to get a copy of it, right, to take a glance.
To
through it.
really understand.
Are you guys okay? Do people need a printed copy, or is
Having it
online okay?
online. That's okay.
Here from Reg, go ahead.
Unmuting. Yeah, I agree with what everybody else said. Lauren, this is fabulous what you put together here, and great work. I would recommend, having been involved with the CPC on and off for more years than I should admit. Is there any way we could schedule for the new members in the fall when everybody's back from summer, like a 2-hour like training session or, some sort of a, I think it's something that Stuart Saganor might be willing to support us on. So that it's not just, 120 plus pages of PDF pages, but it's also sort of a guided tour of the fundamentals, CPA 101, if you will. Because I think if I had gotten that at the very beginning, it would have been incredibly helpful for me.
So
Peter
can
has
I-
a
can I-
comment.
Can I respond to that? So he has a webinar that, what I was gonna suggest is that each member, actually participate in the webinar. Stuart has a live presentation, that I kind of sat on him about, because I've said I want the 30-minute version. He has an hour, sorry, Reg, it's not 2. He has an hour-long presentation on CPC 101. So, but I think that what you're saying is we want new members to do this. I don't think it's not a good use of the committee's time to have them come in. I don't think and spend an hour plus with us every year. But I do think new members, I kind of like the form. I liked him coming in and doing a 30-minute quick drive-by and ask all these great questions that Gene had and Reg had and Dave had. I mean, they're great questions. right?
Was that a half an hour or an hour? I forget.
That was supposed to be a half an hour, but then we spent 30 minutes of Q&A and it was really great. But I don't think that that's great. To Reg's point, I don't think that's what, I think the new members, they could do the webinar or they should, I don't have an easy answer on that because what he does, Reg, is do a training that's an hour-long training. So,
Is that what's listed, the last thing
Is
on the
that
list?
different from the webinar that's linked there, the CPA bootcamp?
oh, that must be it. Yeah, there it is.
Yep, that's an hour.
I was just gonna say that, just my own personal experience, that presentation by Stuart was the most informative
Yeah,
thing
so,
that I've experienced.
and
Being
we,
a new member and, there really wasn't much of a.
I think we owe it to new members to
Yeah.
give them that.
There wasn't much of an
oh,
orientation.
I think we should, I was gonna propose that we do that every September. Have them in for 30
Yeah.
minutes and take Q&A for 30 minutes. But then I think my suggestion kind of answer where it's just idea is direct our new members to do the hour boot camp. I don't know,
On their own.
on their own.
Yeah, I think that's,
In preparation for the 30-minute meeting
Right,
with Stuart, and then they
preparation for
can
the
come with
30-minute.
questions.
I don't know.
Good
I don't
point,
want
good
to,
point.
I don't want
No,
to dictate that.
it's a good point.
I have another comment that, again, I agree with everybody. This is seems like a great package, but I would like to see it online, linked together rather than, 250 pages pushed out to people. I think having it online would be,
Well, it is online, yes, it is. This is just a printed
but-
copy, as I
but I've been involved with these things back and forth over the years, and if you commit to having it online, that's one thing. If you commit to having it like a report, and then you put it online, that's another thing. So I'm saying it's conceive of it as something online from the get-go.
from the get-go,
Yeah,
sure.
that's,
On the CPC page.
well, I mean, if it's gonna be for the general public, fine. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing,
Well,
but if it's gonna be, something just for a member, then that's a separate issue, okay?
Everything to do with public records,
Yeah, it's all
so.
public record.
Okay, that's fine, yeah.
Yeah, we can put it on.
So where are we on this? Laura, do you want us to take a look at it, or is the feedback you're getting right now enough to have you kind of finalize what you've done? I don't think we have to read the minutes. I don't think we have to read some of the things that
No, it's,
you and Cecilia have probably talked about to get into this.
I guess it's more, is there information or resources that maybe I have not had an opportunity to, be introduced to yet, that you're aware of, that you think would be beneficial to
Yeah,
include?
Peter?
Maybe we can propose that if anyone has any any additions, proposed additions, that they can forward them. And I
But
don't
people
know, I don't
don't have
really want
it
to
yet.
vote on the content. We'll give,
We haven't
People don't
seen the
have it
table
yet,
of
though.
contents. I think that would probably, can you send the table of
yeah,
contents?
send us table of contents.
Yeah,
Sure.
does everybody have the document?
No,
No, so,
No, we all looked at the table of contents tonight. That's what we're pivoting on.
so I think also it can be a living, breathing document. It doesn't have to be set in stone. Right?
It will need to be, because for
Yeah.
instance, the schedule is going to change. The committee members will change year to year, and then also the meeting minutes there'll be additions to the
We
meeting.
don't have to
minutes.
just worry about making all the changes right now and then,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay, so you envision it being more of,
It's just a suggestion. Yeah.
You mean the format it's in now?
yeah,
Is that what you need to?
No, what I meant is, that, it is a online document, not a paper document.
Right. And I think you said there'd be a list of members of the CPC as part of it. And I think it's helpful also just say
Yeah.
when that member's term is up or when they started on the
She did.
CPC.
Yeah, that's how I found out that I have expired on historical commission and not listed on the CPC.
So, so the new members understand who has been long time members and who is just new like them, or just 1 year on or something like that.
of course,
Yeah.
there is a form.
The only thing, if it's gonna live on the town's website, is we should not include the member contact
Contacts.
list, because you guys probably don't want your phone numbers out there.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
so let's leave it, Lauren. You'll send the table of contents to each and every one of us. And if there's a question about whether something's included in a particular, you can get feedback from that person on
Great.
that, okay?
Great, and then think about if you want it to be something that lives on the CPC website, or we could set up something in the cloud, for instance, through a service like Dropbox or something else that members have access to. And, it could be internal, so we can decide if you want it to be public or if you want it to be internal.
Okay, all right.
And
Gee,
you referred to the schedule. I don't happen to have it
Yeah.
in front of me, but I know it was distributed a while back. I think it's helpful for new members to have that schedule.
Yeah.
Mm.
I had one other note here to ask about, with the application process document that you revised and kind of pushed out earlier this year, there's also a sample of what the application looks like and then the follow-up questions. When I was going through the CPC documents, I saw drafts of follow-up questions that were specific to different categories of applications. And I didn't know if that was something that you wanted to finalize and include here, or if we were gonna just keep one set of follow-up questions, sample.
They're different for the.
Yeah, we have
categories.
different questions for the different categories. So we have 4 different sets.
We had a red line copy. I don't know if we ever finalized them.
Okay.
So that's what I.
Yeah, so we
Okay,
just
so
wanted to
let-
make sure that we're good with them before we,
Okay.
these are due diligence
yeah.
questions.
Would you like me to circulate those red line drafts so that we could finalize them and make them part of this
Yeah.
handbook?
I thought we
Yeah,
already,
finished them, right?
yeah, I
did,
thought we
we
voted
did.
on it.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember
I
off the
don't-
top of my
I
head.
think if we did vote on them, you probably should just accept the changes.
Okay.
And if you have any, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's right, you're right, you're right.
Sorry.
Anything else for Lauren?
I just wanted to ask Lauren, within what department do you work here in the town, and do you do other work in the town besides helping this committee?
Oh, no, I do not. This is my only work with the town, is with respect to your committee. My job is in the private sector.
Oh, I see. So this is a part-time job for the town, and you're exclusively for us.
Yes, that's correct.
Great.
Anything else? Again, Lauren, thanks for doing that, and we'll wait to see the table of contents coming our way. Jumping down to the fall application process, Cecilia? Is there anything you can give us on the work coming forward?
Yeah, so I can throw together for our next meeting another preliminary schedule if that helps, because then we can kind of work on the dates that everyone thinks. I know it's far in advance, but the other question I had was, I know we had talked about requesting the applications on November 1st instead of December 1st. And if we were gonna do that, I just wanted to to make that a firm decision, so then Lauren and I can work on getting the new application posted and publicized a month earlier than in the past.
What's the wisdom on that? Does it make sense to move up to November?
I wouldn't, can I speak? to
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Because we had noodled through just really, and I don't want to put the housing authority in a special category or put them on the spot or give them. Put bigger burden on them, but it was gonna be a big ask and it's a complicated request, so. That's how we had come up with this idea of, hey, to the housing authority, can you submit your funding request on November 1? And so I didn't think that we were gonna move it up for everybody. I understand now that it's like, now we're making them a category of 1. I don't want to be unfair to them, but I had just suggested that only because it was going to occupy a lot more time. And we were gonna be relying on an expert to deal with us. So I just wanted us to have enough time.
I do think if we're gonna move it up, we should move it up for everyone.
Okay.
Just for an equitable standpoint, but also something to think about. It is a lot of information and it's probably not gonna be the only application. And we do get them in December 1st, and then it puts a lot of pressure on the committee to do a lot over the holidays. And this might spread out some of
Okay,
that workload.
makes sense. Okay, let's stick with the, I'm sorry. Not
Yeah,
ignoring you, I didn't see your hand. Go ahead.
no, I know you're not ignoring me. I would just add that I agree with the principle here. There is a way of making it not about a category of 1. I don't think it's about the Needham Housing Authority. I think there are certain very large projects that come along from time to time. So doing town hall a few years ago, many years ago, I think the Emery Grover project was a pretty complicated project. I think the swimming pool, the Rosemary Pool was a very complicated project. I mean, I think we could, if we wish to, recognizing that Cecilia's point about doing things over the holiday period is a valid one. But we could say if it's a certain size and complexity, then the deadline is November 1st. And if it's redoing a playground, or tot lot, just pick on the tot lot this year, then it's December 1st. I mean, I think there's a possibility of having a 2-tier approach that would also make sense to me. This is a committee member, not taking my Needham Housing Authority hat off here.
Okay.
Yeah, so that doesn't focus on the housing authority exclusively. They have to be November 1st. It could be a dollar amount. If your grant request is above a certain dollar amount, we need it by November 1, and otherwise December 1 is okay. Is that?
I think it really makes it most hard. It must be an administrative. I think it. Can I speak?
Yeah.
I mean, I had suggested November 1, not because it's housing authority, but because of the amount of the ask and the complexity, but it's for that very reason, the amount of the ask and the complexity. But I'm getting some sense, that it's that in terms of administering, on the administrative end, the staff end, it would be easier for whatever reason, easier, fairer, whatever it is, there are equitable reasons involved to have just one deadline.
It's also easier from, I would say, not just an administrative standpoint to have all the applications in at once, but from a evaluation standpoint to know all the applications you're looking at one time, instead of thinking, oh, we have this housing authority one, and then, oh no, there's 5 applications and we were only expecting 2. So it makes it look so you have the full picture. And then, I mean, the Emery Grover was a good example. Housing authority might be an example where the funding request may be a lot more than we end up funding. So it is kind of hard to know what it is. And I think with the flexibility, at least that we've had in the past, that we allow adjustments to the application after it's submitted. I think that pushing the timeline up, there's still the flexibility if things change. They're not tied to even that dollar amount at the end of the day.
Well, I think we have to recognize what's going back on your plate. And if it's November 1st, I would recommend that that's what we do. We use that as a deadline.
I agree. You want to look at all we always try to look at all the capital projects collectively at one time, but Reg has his hand up. So
Reg.
sorry.
So just to build on that conversation, there are years from time to time, I think it was 2 years when we had 9 little projects all at the same time, when we were just like really scrambling to try to, deal with them all. So you can argue it from that point of view, and that leads you, I think, to November 1st.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
That was good.
Any other comments? All right, so we've decided November 1st will be the deadline. Curious, Cecilia, how are these applications advertised? How do organizations know about CPC and?
We posted on the website, and then in at least the last year, if not the last 2 years, it's been in the newsletter that the Director of Community Communications and Community Engagement, they just changed their title now, I don't remember. But previously Cindy, now Amy sends out, and that's one of the ways. And then I think it's a lot of just word of mouth from people who know.
Okay, David?
Oh, yeah, just a general question. Just historically, does the members of this committee, do they have obligation to solicit, interest? Or have,
So, very nice, Peter, for that.
Yeah.
So that may be, I brought this up, but I don't mean to burden the committee as I'm rolling off of it, but, really, you solicit by having a public hearing and saying, what are your community needs and wants? That's the way this, I think that was the real indicator we got from Stuart Saginaw. So I had thrown out the idea, don't throw anything at me, but just having a September, the equivalent of an open house meeting, which is invite everybody, including the select board, the finance committee, the planning board, and all comers, and say, we're open for business. The applications are due November 1. We need to know what the community's needs and wants are. I think that's really consistent with the statute. I just feel like that's something that I personally learned by listening to Stuart and going back and studying the statute just in the last 12 months. Again, I don't mean to put, I think that we covered it by always in the past with having our public hearing, kind of met the rule a little bit. But in terms of having genuine community input, it might be nice to consider doing it could be a very simple open house equivalent public hearing. We want to hear we want your input. In a meeting in September, but that's another meeting for you guys, and I'm not gonna be here. So,
Laura?
I worry about that only because if you don't already know about this, then you're possibly gonna make requests that are not eligible. There could be a lot of ineligible requests, and it could be a lot of work kind of answering questions, and we could also be disappointing a lot of people. I don't know.
I think it's too late to organize something for this September. I really don't think we can do a good job of doing
Now, there's.
it.
You're right.
David?
I mean, just as, my 1 year on this committee, it's either the town or the Needham Housing Authority. Those are the people who are submitting applications. So,
Or the Parks and Recreation Department too. That's not.
well, that's the town.
Well, in the past, we've funded 2 churches. I mean, we've gone beyond the.
Yeah, but that's,
And the farmers market, no, not the farmers,
Yeah, community.
community farm.
yeah. So the main categories are the people who already know about the CPC and I just wonder, if there's other people out there that they could benefit, but they don't know what's going on.
Well, Cecilia mentioned a couple of ways that the town reaches out to make these funds available, or our availability there.
But my original question was like, as an individual member, is there any,
Expectation?
expectation to talk to people about, the CPC, or even if say I knew of a potential project, could I go out and tell somebody, hey, this is something you gotta, submit an application for?
That's not verboten in any way,
Yeah.
if you want to do that.
Okay.
Sure.
We're not fiduciaries, right? We're appointed officials. And so we're not obligated to go out, but and manage funds in a particular way. But I think that if you, sure, there's nothing,
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, coming, right.
sorry.
Yeah, so, just taking Dave's point here, which is an interesting one. I hadn't heard this one before. Yes, there are all the regulars that certainly know that the funding is available, and that includes nonprofit organizations. But for fairly short money, we could place an advertisement, even though we are not required to. But we could place a advertisement in the weekly Needham newspaper, just like the planning board and any other board, and just announce that we will be accepting, we can run it in early September and announce that we're accepting, applications for CPC funding as, deadline November 1st. We could do that. Nothing would prevent us from doing that if we wanted to.
Press release.
Well, press release, I mean, yes, we'll be in the weekly Needham PR vehicle as well. We also have our new Needham Observer newspaper that I loved getting every Thursday, and we could, they're always looking for content, and they could do an article about us, and that would be another way to get the word out there.
I just worry because the new current newspaper, that little paper one, the notices, public notices by the planning committee and the zoning board, those are required public notices that have to go out in some kind of periodical by a certain time.
Yep.
They're not necessarily drawing a lot of people to that periodical. They're just doing it for legal purposes. So I don't think we really right now have, sadly, maybe this observer thing is going to be better. I don't know that we have a medium for that. That's worth spending the money on at this point, but we could talk about that. It's
So
an
I think-
interesting idea, but I just don't know if we have the right place.
Needham Channel could do a show as well. They are always looking for new content to do.
Okay, wait a minute.
We're way beyond the four corners of the agenda.
It's good.
Well, not really.
But I also thought in terms of, I don't know that I would just I don't think that the declarative statement that we can do that, I'm not agreeing with that. So I'd like to hear what staff has to say, and I'd like to give it some thought and not make a decision at 8:40 at night without with just kind of spitballing these things, if you will. So I think that that's an interesting idea that we can consider, but I'd really like to hear from staff, and I want staff to actually have some time to think about it too.
Yeah, I can look into if any other communities do something similar.
Yeah, I'd like to see what peer towns do.
Yeah.
That'd be helpful.
We had talked about getting kind of updates on pending projects and maybe trying to make some changes to the website that might include more information, whether it's photos or little blurbs about what we funded, where those projects stand, maybe how it's impacted the community, that type of thing, kind of. And so maybe if as we start including more of that information and pushing that out through the website, I mean, it's another way to kind of, for people to get to know and learn more about what this committee is doing for the community and maybe pique their interest.
So Cecilia, you put it back in your lap here to find out what other communities are doing, and if in fact you believe that enough of the constituencies out there are hearing the information they need, or whether we need another vehicle.
Yeah, I can do that.
I just have a comment. I agree with Gina. I don't think this is out of the four corners, because we're talking about the fall application process, and this would be a way to let people know about that. So just for whatever it's worth, I disagree with that.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Okay.
All I want to say is, I think that
My opinion.
this is a big change to go from the December 1st to the November 1st. And it should be out there just as soon as possible. It's the town news you need by the name
Yeah.
it puts out. particularly so that the town boards and committees about and departments like Park and Rec and Conservation Commission are aware.
Yeah,
Because they may be planning something and have a December deadline in mind, and we have to let them know right
Yeah.
away.
I wanna say typically when we ask for applications due December first, I've released the application in September. So with the push forward a month, I'll be releasing it in a couple of weeks, so we can advertise it right as it comes out.
Okay. Good. Anyone else? All right, thank you, Cecilia. Anything else you want to add to the agenda here that has not been discussed?
One thing we didn't discuss here was, we're hoping to kind of keep these meetings to a certain limit if we can, in terms of time. I know there's so many things, last year was crazy, the past few years have been crazy, and it's just been a lot. But after, I'm gonna even say an hour and a half, someone's been working all day or doing whatever, you're gonna just lose people. Like a 3-hour meeting, in my opinion, is not purposeful for anybody, so I think we all talk about, Peter included, we just kind of keep in mind maybe an hour and a half if we can, and people get a certain amount of time to talk. And obviously, there's something important and we need more time, we have more time, but if we kind of go into it with that, I think we can be more efficient, I'm hoping. I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, we've discussed this, and I think you're right. The quality of discussion seems to go downhill after.
Well, we lose our
You
way,
do, yeah.
and it's all great, but you know,
The chair's gotta have an iron fist.
well,
Well.
that we have to borrow
That
from
may
Peter
not
maybe,
happen.
but.
When they complained to me, I said, well, I'm sorry about that, that's my, and they were like, no, it's not. you." It's
The
like,
chair gotta cut people off.
With people, if they have that in the back of their mind, and we'll have to repeat it again when we get new people, then maybe they're thinking a little bit differently about how they want to plan, speak and what they want to say. That's all I want to say.
So it's a challenge to be respectful of the people that are speaking, but at the same time trying to limit, not repeating yourself, being sure that, what you're saying is worth listening to. At any rate, yes, we'll keep that in mind. Anything else? I think we ought to take a look at the schedule, Cecilia.
Yes.
You and I spoke earlier that there may not be a need for a meeting next week, because what we're gonna do is assign the liaisons, and that's happening. Are we jumping down to the 23rd of August?
So I guess there's two different ways, and it depends on what the committee wants to do. We can skip all the meetings and meet again on August 23rd when the proponents come to present. And I can get out any questions that we may have to them to discuss in their presentation prior to that, or we can keep the August 9th meeting, talk about any follow-up questions that we may want from the proponents, and then meet again on the 23rd.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do we get their application, full application? Before or after their presentation?
So Lauren had sent out their application, but it did not have the due diligence questions. That's normally after we've decided that they're eligible.
Okay, then we give them the question.
Yeah,
And then do they make a presentation before or after they answer the questions?
it's
I guess
been
I
a
was-
little bit of both in the past, so I guess. Would you like them to come submit their due diligence questions prior to their presentation, at their presentation? I guess. What level of information does everyone want? I know this one's a little bit weird because it is a repeat, so.
But they never made a presentation before, and they never answered the questions.
I
Fully.
think they have due diligence questions.
Yeah, but there was. Whatever, they didn't answer the fair.
Go ahead, Peter.
So I think we usually, it's a little bit of a dual track, because if you remember the presentations, they can come in quickly. And a lot of times they foster additional questions. We had one prior member who didn't like to draft his questions until after he heard the presentation. Okay, so it's a little bit of it's a bit of a dual track. So I don't think it's necessary that they answer the question before they make a presentation. It's just, it hasn't been in the past.
Yeah, I couldn't remember.
What's more valuable? Isn't it more valuable to have questions answered as part of the presentation than getting them after the fact? After the presentation?
Well, I guess I would look at it. It's like a two-step process. One is they haven't given us anything. So, it's hard to develop questions about, due diligence questions when they haven't really explained what they're trying to do. And then, if, once they make a presentation, yeah, there's always gonna be questions after the presentation, a lot of which could be answered at the presentation. So,
I thought our decision was after the application was submitted. The follow-up questions were a follow-up to the application.
Yeah,
yeah, but the application doesn't say anything.
Well, then they're gonna have a lot of follow-up questions.
Yeah,
That's why we did the questions, because
yeah, I mean,
we're not,
I guess if we voted today to, that they're eligible, so we should then ask them this, we should give them the
follow-up.
follow-up
questions
questions right away, and then, hopefully they'll answer the question.
That's fair.
yeah, so we can send them their due diligence questions and ask for them to be back by a certain date. I guess my question would be, would we want to have a meeting before the presentation to discuss the responses of the due diligence questions, or would we want just to have them ready for the presentation on the 23rd?
Well, could we get them before and
Yeah.
just not have a meeting?
Yeah,
Yeah, and then
Look at them ahead of time and then have
let them make the
them
presentation.
come?
yeah, absolutely.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, I don't think it's that complicated.
No.
So if we're doing the 23rd. I can get them back, I can ask for them by August 11th. I mean, most of this should be
Done.
repeated, like the same, so
Okay,
I don't think I think that should be sufficient time.
so if they come back to you by the 11th, we'll have them prior to the 23rd.
Yeah, and then you'd have at least a full week.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
makes
great.
sense.
So, I just want to make sure I've got my calendar right. We're not meeting on the 26th. We're not meeting next week.
Correct.
And we're not gonna meet on the 9th either.
No, that's correct.
Okay, but we are meeting on the 23rd, and as I said, I'll do my best. We'll see.
Mr. Foster,
Yes, sir. I'm in favor of also the way the discussion has been going. And I would add one more thing, which is if Cecilia thinks the 9th is a reasonable date for having the detailed due diligence questions answered, that we might also give the members a deadline of, a week or so from now. If we have any individual questions that we might want to add to the standardized questions, that we get those into Cecilia as well, so that they can be answered as well by the 9th, and we can have all that information going into the presentation on the 23rd.
So that makes what Reg, can I speak?
Yep.
What Reg is proposing is really consistent with what our procedure is, right? Just kind of reminding us, hey, there's this kind of individualized effort here that we're supposed to do on the due diligence questions. So Cecilia, when are you gonna send it? Can I ask?
Yeah.
Cecilia, when are you gonna send that? When were you sending out the due diligence questions?
So I was thinking we could get them out to them this week, but if the committee wants extra time to draft additional questions, I can either send that as a follow-up to the due diligence, so they can at least get started on the due diligence. And then if everyone here can get any follow-up questions to me and Lauren by, I don't know, would the 26th be next Wednesday, so a week? Then we can send those out by the end of next week, so they have. And we'll send out the due diligence questions to everyone on the committee, so they know this is what we're already asking. You don't need to.
Okay, that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
Yes.
That makes sense to me. And so instead of having a meeting, we just need to do our homework by the 26th.
Yeah.
Excellent. Anyone else? Laura?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
do I have a second?
Second,
Roll call vote. Reg,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Laura, Peter,
Yes.
chair votes yes as well. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Night.
And,